Hey everybody, I have the cheery topic of murder, otherwise known as homicide. This is the data of recorded homicides from 1980 until 2014. I'll just start going through what the diagrams here show, or the report shows. This here is a pretty holistic view of all the incidents reported. I'm gonna go through each one of these just to show what they do and what they mean. So this one here, homicides by sex, is basically a representation of all the incidents during this time. The perpetrator's sex. This correlates to how many of those incidents were either female or male. So here we can see that females murder males at a rate of 50 or 5.8%, and then other females at 1.71. For males, they murder people a little bit more. They're about 50% male on male homicides, make up all the incidents, and then 15% are female. And then of the unknowns, of the perpetrators that are unknown, 24% of those victims are male and only 5% are female. So then down here, I have a breakdown. So this bar right here, this will equal 100%. But I have a breakdown of the weapons used by a perpetrator based on their sex. So of all the incidents, 62% of the incidents where handgun is used were done by males. So you can see the incidents right here. Of about 640,000 incidents, 190 of them were men with guns. Women are a lot less. And then so you can see the breakdown of different categories. And this goes down by scale, so handguns is the most frequent, second most frequent, things like that. There are a couple categories like handgun, firearm, shotgun, rifle. These are all typically, I mean, they can all fall into the category of gun. They all kind of have the same similar breakdown of about 5 to 6%, in that range. I don't know the distinction between handguns, firearms, all those things, or why they categorize them differently. But as we can see, there are a couple categories where females and males are kind of equal, like drowning here. I guess males like to explode stuff a little bit more. Females are privy to poison, typically is the pattern. And then the one that's interesting here to look at is of the perpetrators that are unknown, firearms are the highest percentage. So I guess if you want to get away with murder, use a firearm. Sorry, FBI. If you're listening, I apologize. So here we have the murder rate by state. So this was just an equation that I did. I took the total number and divided it by their incidence and then multiplied it by 100 to get the rate of occurrence, basically. How accurate that is, I'm not entirely sure, but it does actually look pretty darn close to what it is. So if you hover over a state, like California is by far the highest murder rate by state at 33. New York is close behind, but about half still. 16.2. Texas is, I guess, the second highest at 20.52. Yeah. So the smaller the circle, the lower the murder rate. Hawaii is, I think, one of the smaller ones, 0.25 or 45. But then these states are the tiniest, 0.10. So if you don't want to get murdered, move to North and South Dakota or Montana. Pretty low murder rate. Wisconsin is not bad. 2.03 compared to Illinois. I mean, they got Chicago, but I mean, and then Detroit with Michigan in there is 9. So that's pretty interesting to look at. And then this is the holistic view of homicides by year. As you can see, it was pretty high coming in 1980. And then there was a gigantic increase in 1992 to 93 in this range in the late 80s to early 90s. Not exactly sure why. That's definitely something worth looking into. And then this one is, or right around 1993 and 1994 is when there's a huge drop. And so this is one of your test cases where you're looking at this and you can ask why. I mean, why this major drop in homicides during this time? So an interesting thing to do, for me, it was just a guess. I just did a quick search for gun control in 1993, and there was a huge policy in 1993, and then in 1994 for gun control. So if you just want to cross-reference that stuff, you can look at those things. Actually, my data turned out pretty close. This is the CDC's homicide rates. So I think the pattern sticks. My data might be a tad off, but it looks pretty close. I think they're just using firearms exclusively, whereas my data has everything. But it's pretty close. Anyway, moving on. So then here is where you can filter down by state. So anytime you select one of these, it will show you. I'm going to find an interesting one. California is interesting because it has the highest, but by year it looks pretty similar. So it'll filter in. You can look at that, look at where it is in the map, and then all of these change based on that particular state's incidence. So if we wanted to look at Wisconsin's, for instance, we can see that there was a pretty big surge around the mid 90s, and then it tapered off, I guess, in the early 2000s. These are interesting to look at. I like looking at these by state. So this shows you how many incidents over the years there have been. So there's only been 5 explosions that have taken lives in the last about 20 years, but all of them have been male. So only 2 poisonings. Oops, I'm going to take that out. So you can really drill down and look at the breakdown of where these fall. But I mean, Wisconsin, boy, males sure like their handguns. That's all I'm going to say about that. Very interesting that I don't think there's a category or a state that I've seen where females have outdone males anywhere. That one was pretty close. Generally, poison is, about 50-50. Drowning's usually about 50-50. Anyway, and then so there's a couple other use cases that you can do. I know that when I get curious, I look at, I think this one was a unique one. I noticed this early on. This is hard to read, but of the perpetrators that are unknown, New York has a staggeringly high rate. These are the cases where, you can presume that they're unsolved. If you don't know the perpetrator, it's an unsolved case. So a lot of times I look at that just to see, how, like, Mississippi, 12% go unsolved. Oh, yikes. Oh, that's not very much. I think there's a couple other states where it's pretty high, but this is basically what you can do. And I think one takeaway that I had was that even though this homicides bear this large view of yearly homicides, I was expecting it to match the states, but it doesn't. Generally, every state has a different. California is the closest, but it has a different kind of rate at which homicides take place. There's no real distinct pattern that I can see other than the mid 90s being kind of a higher point. Other than that, you can look at other bigger or other more important incidents. I think Oklahoma is an interesting one. you have this here, the spike in 95, and that is because of the Oklahoma City bombing. So if you know what you're looking for, you can see how it compares to other things. I mean, if you know that you're looking for, yep, that one, yeah, you can select. So males that use explosives, gigantic spike in 1995 because of the Oklahoma City bombing. And you can see the victims, I mean, the breakdown here. So this is where you can see, yeah, handgun raids, pretty typical. So there's a whole lot of stuff that you can see. Even this changes. Well, it's not even that high enough to give you a statistic. But yeah, that is my data. I guess it's pretty somber, but interesting nonetheless. You can find out a lot looking at this stuff. All right, thanks.